Good evening, and welcome to the May 25th, 2021 School Committee. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed on the LPS Admin YouTube channel, as well as televised by the Lynnfield Media Studios for broadcast on Files Channel 30, as well as Comcast Channel 8. Tonight's meeting is also being covered by the local Lynnfield print media. The first item on our agenda tonight is our annual school choice hearing. If I could have a motion to open the hearing.
Move to open the 2021-2022 school choice hearing.
Second.
Having had the motion made and seconded, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Heyman?
Yes.
Mrs. DePrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dahlstedt?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. If I could ask Superintendent Vogel to share the Lynnfield philosophy and make a recommendation regarding school choice.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So historically, Lynnfield has never participated in school choice in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The reasons for not participating are that the district is committed to maintaining class sizes that allow for the development of relationships between the teacher and the student. As well as philosophically, the committee has always believed that it did not want to take revenue from other cities and towns in the process of school choice. So I would recommend that we, for the 2021-2022 school year, not participate in school choice.
Any comments? Anybody? No? Do we have any public participation? Seeing none. Can I have a motion to request to cancel, close the hearing?
Move to close the school choice hearing.
We will.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Second.
All in favor, and it's again a roll call vote, so we have Mr. Heyman?
Yes.
Mrs. DePrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dahlstedt? And
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Now we would make a motion. If I can have Mr. Heyman.
Move that Lynnfield withdraw from the school choice for the 2021-22 school year for class sizes and philosophical reasons.
Second.
Again, this will be a roll call vote. Mr. Heyman?
Yes.
Mrs. DePrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dahlstedt?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Next on the agenda, we have our last two meeting minutes for approval. If I could have a motion.
Move to approve the April 27th, 2021 regular school committee meeting minutes, the May 11th, 2021 fiscal year 22 public budget hearing minutes, the May 11th, 2021 school committee meeting minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And next on the agenda, we have the school improvement update for this year. Mrs. Vogel?
Thank you. So first, before we have the leadership team start the presentation, I wanted to recognize all of them for their work on this presentation and to acknowledge the incredibly hard work that this team has put in this year. I want to be sure to point out that this team has made progress, on their school improvement plans while being crisis managers and moving schools from hybrids to full in-person, all while moving the work forward, which is really, really remarkable. I also want to point out, and I'm hoping that you will pay attention to this as you're watching the presentation, is that you will see that, and you may have seen this in your notes as well, is that what sort of links everybody together is our district strategy, right? And that the school improvement plans are reflective of the district strategy. And you'll also notice that we have a commonality in the forms, right? So you don't have a high school with a different form or Huckleberry Hill with a different form, right? We have a district form that links everyone together, so you see visually that what ties it all together, and then in their actions and in their school improvement plans, right, you can see the connections to the district strategy, but you also see each school's individual uniqueness, culture, grade level. And so I want you to just keep that in mind as you're looking at that, that's intentional. There's intentionality there in that work. So with that, I will turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Kristen. And I certainly echo Kristen's comments about this team. I just can't say enough. You know, it's just, we're not, you know, we're in the trenches, right? We are, the reality is, I'm in a central office position, and you know, we do everything we can to support this team, but they are in the trenches with this work. It's remarkable what they've done, and our teachers, we simply cannot thank them enough. I don't know if they're watching tonight, hopefully not, but on this beautiful evening. But no, I simply cannot thank our teachers enough. It is simply remarkable, the work that they have done. You know, there's a lot. I'm glad Kristen pointed out that we are making progress despite navigating the various COVID protocols over the course of the year. I can tell you definitively that we are making progress and we are set up for success for next year. The nice thing about this evening, what I always like about it, is we are here to see, we can actually see the big picture, right? We can see the vision come together. We can celebrate what's been accomplished in the most trying of years, but we can also look ahead at the exciting work ahead. So that's, you know, there's a lot to be enthused about this evening. Drew, you're on. Thanks. By now, I think you're familiar with our mission and our vision. You can turn over the next slide. But this is where it all intersects, right? It's one thing to have a mission, it's one thing to have goals, but you need to put the support in place. You need to put the professional development in place to support the work that we're doing. Our goals, as you know, we had to shift in response to the pandemic. You know, you think back to last summer, in the scrambling and the working closely with the tech department, you know, just to making sure that we were prepared for those opening 10 days, and then making sure that our educators had the opportunity to adopt goals that were going to be meaningful and supportive of the hybrid learning environment. So that all had to happen pretty quickly. So what that meant is, over the course of the year, we did operate on almost a month-to-month in terms of professional development, because we wanted to be constantly responsive to the needs of our educators as we had shifts in the hybrid model. And that's where, you know, in past years and hopefully next year, you're going to see more of a prescription, right, in terms of an entire year planned out. And we knew that going in. It just, the reality is that did not happen. I think the good news is our educators had more choice and flexibility than they've had before. And I think they certainly deserved that and needed that over the course of our professional development plans. You're going to see a major, I mentioned the technology department, because tech integration was obviously a big part of our work, and also the SEL, social emotional learning, and how it all came together was just was critical. So. Here are our strategic objectives. Again, I will say that I can speak with confidence, and I know that I can tell you definitively the team is in agreement that we have made progress in all of these areas despite the pandemic. Certainly we saw a shift in content, and we had to be flexible. But it's our solid, it's our foundation that's been in place and our core values that, we stuck to all along and that allowed this progress to happen. Kristen spoke to you about the alignment in our opening. This is where we had written up almost like some exemplars for teachers over the summer to say, hey, these are goals that are going to really fit well with the work that we're about to set out to do in this hybrid learning model. So our educators jumped on some of those goals and worked collaboratively to accomplish what we needed to do. And as I said, most of those were around technology integration and SEL as well. Drew? Thank you. Any questions so far before we get into the each of the strategic objectives?
Can I just one thing, just as we go through the whole thing. First of all, when we think about professional development, I would argue that all of our teachers went through basically 4 months of real-time professional development, figuring it out as they go. So, there's no reason to, some things happened and some things didn't happen because of COVID. And I would just ask as we go through this, let's just have a really honest conversation. I don't think any of us expect that that everything was going to go exactly like we planned, or anything like we planned. So if there are things that we hit here, then let's celebrate those. If there are things that we missed because we couldn't do it, let's just be honest with it. And if there are things that weren't covered on the plan that that we had added benefits of, and professional development and technology are 2 examples of that, then let's call those out as well.
Thanks, Jamie. So building leadership capacity, so what we've done is we've tried to carve out the highlights for you in terms of the strategic objectives. So one particular highlight we'd like to emphasize is technology integration planning. And I'm going to let Stephanie Holman speak to this because of the leadership that she has undertaken with this group.
So one of the big things that we've done in the past 2 years is the Technology Advisory Committee. This committee is comprised of teachers and educators from throughout the district. We tried really hard to have 2 from every building, different grade levels, special educators, so that we could get a cross-section of needs and interests. It was really important during this year to have that teacher voice, that educator voice with us. And from that, we had some leaders really emerge, like Liz Lamonica, who was instrumental, and Krista Wright, who were instrumental in the professional development and helping to get the teachers ready. So we're continuing to do that work next year, and I'm looking forward to actually meeting them in person once again. Keep going.
Yeah, so kudos to Stephanie in the tech department for building leadership capacity with our teachers. And you're going to see later on in the presentation that we're going to take this a step further going into next school year with more and more technology coming into the buildings. The other component here is we're all about, it's not just teacher capacity, it's about student leadership capacity as well. And we feel we really hit the mark with this particular 1E, increasing student opportunities across the district. One highlight that I will speak to, and I know the team has some additional highlights here, is the work of our student internship program at the high school. I got to thank Bob and Brian for supporting this program. We were fortunate to obtain a grant through the Department of Education. And we had really consistently April on, 4th quarter mainly, but we had some students begin in March, as early as March, and they're working in our buildings, and they are helping us through this most trying of times in our schools, and you know what a scramble it is for staffing in our buildings, and they've really, we were able to place 18 of them in both through our elementary schools and our middle school, and they've really done a nice job supporting our students in a variety of capacities. And I know our educators are appreciative of that, and I can't say enough. Brian Bates is just, anything student-centered he runs with, and he's really done a phenomenal job of, keeping this going. And the good news is, through this partnership, we've developed a relationship with the North Shore Workforce Board, and we're going to have some carryover to our community schools programming, where we're going to continue to employ these students. And I'm being told we're going to have an opportunity to continue this work in the fall. And on top of that, they're assisting us with job placements. So, students on IEPs, low income, we're starting the conversation, recent conversations with Curtis Blyde and Brian Bates on how we can help these students gain meaningful employment through this workforce board. So that's been a real bonus for us. But I'm sure there's other opportunities the team wants to highlight there as well. Renell?
Team highlight.
That's what I was talking right there. We mentioned you. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. No, I'll just to further what Kevin was saying with the internship program. I know that we've heard a lot from the schools where the students are interning, but the seniors, just seeing them and talking to them, they've really enjoyed the program. We're going to be debriefing on Thursday this week with all the students with the prospective schools they've been in to get some feedback from them. But they've enjoyed it so much that we have more than half that are going to be returning to the schools after graduation. So after June 4th, they're going to be coming back to the schools to continue working in the classroom. And these are students who really aren't going into college for education, but they've just really thoroughly enjoyed their experience so far. So.
Thanks, Brian. So in terms of educator growth, we're focusing in here on a group that I think we have all felt in the past that we could have done a better job, in terms of providing meaningful professional development for. And we feel like we really hit the mark this school year. Certainly, the pandemic was conducive with the obvious need around social emotional learning. You saw, hopefully you had a chance to go through the district-wide document of SEL offerings. I'd say pretty much on a monthly basis there was an option for our educators around, it could be around self-care, it might have been student anxiety, depression, how to build relationships in a remote environment. At one point that was a critical need. So we were able to really work with our partners. I'm talking about Mass Partnerships for Youth, Salem State Collaborative, the North Shore Consortium. We partnered with Merrimack College as well. And actually quite a few of these were free because of the partnerships that we have. In addition to, I can't say enough about the support of a healthy Lynnfield. It was Dr. Rob Evans, as you recall, out of the gate, that helped transition our educators. With this most trying times to start the school year, and the feedback there was very positive. In terms of their ability to adjust. And getting ready for the hybrid model. So Dr. Evans was a real bonus for us. But I think that there's a lot to learn from this. I think it's the more we can provide choice and flexibility and really benefit from our work with our partners. I think this is going to pay off some long-term dividends for the district as well. Any questions on educator growth and what we were able to provide for this for our counselors, psychs, guidance, our support staff? Rich?
So if I could, I don't want you to sell yourself short here. If you read through the topics that these teachers had exposure to, considering the moment in time we were in, it couldn't have been more spot on. and how do you not thank them with your whole heart to say, thank you for investing in yourself and then investing in the children. I'm tempted to read through some of the topics. Just again, I don't want you to sell yourself short on what they took advantage of over this last year, and I thank them for that.
Thank you, Rich. Curriculum and assessment. We highlighted educated teams identifying the scope and sequence, including appropriate assessments in response to COVID-19. This one, this goes right back to the teachers and our curriculum coordinators. I can't say enough about the curriculum leadership team and the work they did, and our principals getting our teachers array. We moved ahead. I mean, we simply moved ahead. We have an understanding by design framework, as you know, in this district, that the work has been intentional, right? The teachers have had to focus on what is most essential in terms of our curriculum pre-pandemic. I think we like to think that really set the stage for a lot of this work, but they've just been so deliberate. They are so driven. You go into, during those hybrid learning days, you go into those classrooms, and it was, the determination was just so impressive, and the resiliency of our students, and the homeschool partnership, because it truly took a village on this one. And you did get to see the data presentations at the elementary and the middle school levels to get a sense of the progress that our students were still making. But again, our real, we had to make some shifts, with our assessments. A little bit more of an emphasis on our formative assessments, really being comfortable with the technology, knowing what, how to assess a kid in a remote environment. So there was quite a bit here to navigate. So I don't want to make it sound like it was, that's seamless, but certainly our educators with the supports in place were able to move ahead, and our students moved ahead with the curriculum. So we thought that was a real highlight there. Yes, Phil.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you on that in particular. I really think you all did a great job with the focus on what standards, what skills, what instruction is most important, because there wasn't as much time to deliver it. And also the emphasis you were talking about formative assessments, and the fact that you very nimbly navigated your way through this. And so basically yes, students didn't learn as much last year, right? But we know, and from those data presentations that you gave, we know exactly where the focus needs to be for, moving forward. So I think you all did a great job with that. Thank you.
So I would just say, Rich and I actually attended an ASC seminar on recovery learning, and during the whole thing, the whole session, all I kept thinking, and I think Rich probably felt the same, I won't speak for you, but was how fortunate we are, Kevin, to have you and to have this administrative leadership team. You didn't miss a beat. There's going to be some gaps, but everything that we've seen and that we've heard and are hearing just shows that it's going to just kind of continue, and you're going to go back and figure out where, if and where the gaps are, and then just move all the students forward and move the district forward. So just thank you for that, because it was obvious from attending that session how very, very fortunate this district is. So thank you.
I would say that meeting was to give a kickoff for districts to get to step one when we're so many steps ahead from many other districts. And we, again, we were on this live meeting, but texting each other saying, how lucky are we? How lucky are we to be where we are today? So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you understand that and you've seen that in real time, because I say, how can we take this to another level? And you're going to hear it tonight. Like, what we're going to be doing with assessments next year, we are going to take it to another level, knowing that that's a good, you still don't right? Kids are still going to fall through. You don't want that to happen, right? They're still not going to be where we want them to be. So we need to identify those students, and you'll hear more about that tonight in terms of some of the tools we're looking at for next school year as well. Thank you. Sorry, Drew. Thanks. All right, assessment accountability. So this was about to get off the ground in March of last year, and then we shut down. This was the implementation of the English language leadership team. And I'm going to tell you, it did get off the ground this year thanks to Roberta Keene, Meg Valentine, Stephanie Clove, and the work that they've done. And I'm going to let Roberta speak to this one, but there's been a lot accomplished here.
So it is a requirement for districts to have an ELE leadership team, and we were able to form the team this year. And some of the primary responsibilities of that team is to review data and for us to look at the outcome of DESE's tiered focus monitoring. So they did some progress monitoring for our ELL program in the previous school year. And looking at that data and our current data, we as a team set goals based on that review. And some of the action items that we were actually able to accomplish this year was the establishment of a family engagement subcommittee. With the support of a Healthy Lynnfield, we were able to hire a family engagement specialist to work with our ELL teachers, Meg Valentine and Stephanie Clove, to try to really find ways to really reach out to our ELL families and engage them. We also established a language support subcommittee. So, those teams did get to meet. Both subcommittees had meetings and were able to start the planning for next year. And those teams are really excited to continue the work they started this year into next school year and to continue to work on the action items. Like Kevin said, it was a bit delayed. So there are some recommendations from the DESE tiered focus monitoring around finding and implementing some new curriculum for our students and taking the work from those subcommittees and moving it forward. But the team is well positioned to really jump into that next year, which is great.
There's a few members of this team on that committee, along with several educators, and of course our EL teachers as well. Thank you, Roberta.
Sorry, I've just got one little comment there, which this isn't a negative by any means, but so I think it's becoming more common practice now to not refer to the students as English learners rather than English language learners, because that's kind of based on the fact that the English language is the most important piece. And a term which I thought used to be a really good one was LCD, which was linguistically and culturally diverse, and also one that I've just been doing some reading on as now is emergent bilinguals, which is a much more asset-based way of looking at things. So just as as a way of maybe describing this program in the future, just a thought.
And there's been so many shifts, Bill, right? I'm glad you're on top of that, because it's been pretty constant.
Yeah, else the linguistically and culturally diverse didn't last long, because it was, I think the Department of Education realized it was actually positive. Lasted 6 months.
So getting back to social emotional wellness, this 5B is all about the preparation that happened over the summer, right? And really, I'm going to let, it's our principals led this work. Tony Rebello, absolute all-star, in terms of the consistency, the procedures with our COVID protocols, just to keep our families, our students safe, and our faculty safe on a day in and day out basis. You guys know what it's like in the buildings. If you feel free to jump in on this one, but I just can't say enough about the job. At times, I truly felt we were akin to a professional sports team with a contact tracing. That's happening. I mean, it was just simply remarkable. So and that's Tony Rebello obviously deserves the bulk of the credit. Yeah. The integration of the social emotional learning with the community resources through partnership with a Healthy Lynnfield. Peg Saladay and her team, they're still a fairly new team, and they had to build relationships during a pandemic, and it's remarkable, the relationships that they were able to build, the programming that they were able to put forward in our community for families, as well as a support to the school system. Equity has drawn our biggest crowds, but we certainly had a variety of offerings. Where, with that being said, we're still exploring ways on how to increase parent engagement. I can't say it's ever been easy in this district. So we'll continue to look at that and to way to strengthen our family program in a way that's going to lead to optimal attendance. But one thing about a Healthy Lynnfield too is we're always getting feedback from our families, which is tremendous. In order to plan our next steps. Roberta mentioned that the hiring of our family engagement specialist, who has been able to provide meaningful connections for those English learners. And we're looking to extend that work beyond that population as well. But we've all, had the opportunity to work closely with Olga Sanchez as the family engagement specialist, and just to further connect the dots. You heard from our youth council, at our last meeting, and the work that they're doing in our schools, and some of the data that they're gathering as well. Additionally, thanks to a Healthy Lynnfield, we were able to hire a civics fellow, Merrimack College fellow, which is a graduate student that'll be working within our social studies department at the high school next school year on a part-time basis, supporting the implementation of our civics project. So as you may know, there's a mandatory civics project for high school students and for middle school students, grade 8 as well. So we're fortunate to have another set of hands with our social studies teacher, and hopefully this work is going to benefit our middle school population as well, because the focus here is going to be to build those community partnerships. So when our students are out in the community, really helping, bridge any gap there and getting students making in a spot where they'll be successful in the community and able to make those meaningful connections. So that's all part of the work that's happening in partnership with Healthy Lynnfield here. Any questions there?
Kevin, so COVID wellness and the work Tony's done and contract cases, there's no question about that. When we talk about social emotional wellness, there's a lot of, it feels like trying to get through it, get to people around the edges, right? What have we seen in terms, the pandemic has caused a social emotional crisis for some kids. What have we done to make sure that we're getting the right SEL services to our most in need students? I know we've had the adjustment counselors in, and I know we hadn't fully reopened when we had them in, but they still had capacity, and we were still encouraging parents and students to get there. Are we identifying and getting to the students most in need?
I guess I'll jump in there real quick. We're doing what we always do. I think there's a part of that. I get that was the fear of a lot of people, but I think those are just daily conversations that we see happening, not only with our adjustment counselors, but through our assistant principals and leaders and classroom teachers and our school counseling folks. Those are ongoing. Those are constantly. But to be honest with you, COVID or not, those are always conversations that are happening. That anytime somebody sees or feels that a student might be in crisis or is struggling somewhere along the line, those names are brought up and those conversations are had. And again, doing whatever we can do to try to get them to the right spot and get whatever strategies, whatever resources we have for them that are there. And think it's, certainly that this has been more difficult than a normal year, there's no doubt about it. But sometimes I feel like people are like more worried that like there's kids just lying around with nobody helping them. It's not like that. Anybody that is reaching out or is asking for that help, or that we're recognizing as a kid that may be struggling, and I'll go right along. Brian, we're working on it right now as we've got a handful of seniors that are struggling to get to the finish line, and Brian's been doing yeoman's work to try to make sure, as we look at credit recovery programs and all sorts of things to support them, to get them through, and then how that then trickles down into what we're also doing for our underclassmen for some of the same things, as we get kids that are getting to the end of the year here and may not be where they want to be, but how can we get them and how can we support them?
Just a really quick thing, just to add on to what Bob was saying, I think one big change we've seen is, especially this year, are kids advocating for themselves and kids advocating for other kids, speaking out when they're not feeling right, when they need the help, both academically and socially, emotionally. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen this year, at least at the high school level. The kids really speaking up, hey, I'm struggling, I need help. Or parents calling us saying, hey, my child is really struggling, what can we do? So we really relied on the student body and parents to bring that forward to the high school.
I want to echo, too, what Bob said, because I reached at the same time and I had the same idea. It's just...
It's a game show, you lost.
You beat me. Let's see who answers better. No, I'm just kidding. But I think we take so much pride in the relationships that we build with our students, and that we know our students. So outside COVID or not, we're always looking out for the best interest of our students, and we also have built those relationships with our families. So I feel confident, even under the difficult circumstances, that we are continuing to build those relationships and offer help when kids need it.
The difference this year, though, is the adjustment counselors at the elementary level, because they can take children in a way that we couldn't before, because we didn't have that kind of time or staff. And so this year especially, that has been so noticed. We can double the lunch bunches, we can double the number of people greeting children at the door who may be reluctant to come in. And that has made a huge difference this year.
The other thing that I think's happened in more frequency this year, and it's understandable, is families in crisis, not just children in crisis. And I think the staff has worked really hard to connect families to outside resources, whether it be through Interface, which we saw those referrals double from past years, but in other ways too. Whenever we could, we've tried to connect families with outside resources so that the families could get the support they needed, which ultimately supports the children.
I'll just give you a quick concrete example from the middle school. Our counseling team did what they called minute meetings. And they worked with the grade level teachers to set out very short surveys to the kids, and they did this 5 through 8, basically asking a few questions about mental health and just kind of gauging where the kids were. And it sort of culminated in a question of, do you want to meet with a counselor? Or based on some of the answers, they could tell if they thought maybe some students should meet with a counselor. And from those, that led to 81 different students who basically got flagged enough where one of the counselors met with them. So they met with each one of those 81 different students, and then those led to a variety of interventions, anything from like a one-on-one session to just kind of piece things back together, and that kid was good, all the way through referrals to mental health specialists for families, referrals to doctors and things like that, and really much more significant. So from those sort of identification process, then the variety of interventions were able to follow depending on what kids needed. So that was one of the things that worked really well for our counseling staff.
Thank you. And I think this is just the passion with which you talk about this is what has put Lynnfield above most of the districts that are out there. Just the absolute refusal to let any kids fall through the cracks. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know we're always quick to mention the adjustment counselors. It's not just about, obviously they're doing a tremendous job, it's not just about the positions, it's the programs, and it's the, like at Espert was implemented a number of years ago, Signs of Suicide. Tom and Brian have done a good job, great job, keeping this going in our schools. It's just other mechanisms, another way to screen students that are at risk, and along with what Tom's referring to as well. So But Jamie, it's a great question because, you know, my district hat, when I think about SEL, like, I think about all kids. You know, I think, all right, what SEL because it needs to be integrated with what we're doing already. So like from a PD, from a, you know, training standpoint, it's how can I support my teachers to support all kids? But then it's a great question about, you know, those kids that are at risk, so thank you. All right, Drew, we're going to move ahead to next school year unless we have any other questions here. Okay, we did link all of the evidence, both building-based and district-wide. I don't know if you want to ask any questions while we're still on this past year before we move ahead. Can we move ahead, please? Thank you. Spinning the air, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, Stacy had a comment.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just a very brief question, actually, in terms of our English learners. I'm just curious, make sure I'm saying it properly, in terms of numbers, and I don't know if there's no exact numbers, kind of compared to where we've been in past years. You know, has it been a significant, or, you know, how many different languages are being spoken across the district and the number of students?
The how many numbers of languages being spoken, I'm going on memory, which is not what it used to be, so I'm thinking 30-ish. I know as of October, we had at 52 students, but that number has steadily risen every year because that happens prior to the testing that's done every spring. So I'm not sure if all the testing's been completed, but we were up to 52, and I know this is my third year. When I started, we were in the 30s. It was like 36. So those numbers have steadily grown.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely.
All right, Drew, we'll start with building leadership capacity, I believe. No?
Oh, nice.
Maybe.
This is the first one.
No, you can move.
Oh, okay. Move forward.
It's district-wide curriculum, so, okay. So these are our highlights, you know, moving forward now as we look ahead to our next school year. You know, there's always, from a curriculum standpoint, we're always looking to, you know, to differentiate, right? The work looks very different in each of the buildings. This is, it's going to be nice to get back to the curriculum development, the understanding by design, you know, that we just obviously haven't been able to do to its fullest capacity here. So this is going to be certainly a highlight to returning to our foundation and really be able to delve deeper into the work that was started, you know, prior to the pandemic. I am going to dig deeper into the different levels as we go through this for item number 4. That's going to come a little bit later in the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie for number 6, because as the growing, you know, with all this technology that's emerging in the district, in terms of next steps and where we want to go with the technology.
Thank you. So 2 of the ways, we obviously want to capitalize on the strides that the teachers and the students and all of us have made with technology this year. We want to make sure that the technology is being implemented in a way that impacts learning the greatest. So a couple of the ways that but also safely. So one of the big things that we're going to be doing next year is we've actually joined the Student Data Privacy Consortium, which is a nationwide consortium of school districts who force companies to enact data privacy contracts with them. What this means for us is that we have confidence that our students' data moving forward will be protected, provided our teachers use the tools that we have contracts with. We anticipate this being a very good thing for our students, but it's one that we're going to have to work with the teachers to find tools, to find exhibits for, contracts for our vendors that the teachers are using now. And if sometimes the vendors refuse to sign the contracts, finding alternatives for the teachers. The second thing that we are putting into place is the Clever Edtech Analytics. This allows us to track all the student and teacher usage of the tools that we purchase and they use. And what this means for us is that we can then pinpoint our professional development onto the areas of need, areas of growth, and things that we pay for that maybe are being underutilized. So it will be, moving forward, a really useful tool. We're also putting into place a web filter that will track usage of student use and teacher use. Again, with the result of us being able to pinpoint where our professional development should be, where our dollars should be, and to make sure that we're using both appropriately. My thing is always, I want to use my money to empower students, or not my money, sorry, your money. To empower students and educators to really move forward for the jobs that probably don't exist right now, that those students are going to be having. So that's what we're going to be doing. Those are the tools in place so that we can really hopefully capitalize on the strides that everyone has taken this year. Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Stephanie. Joe?
Okay. I'm going to have Melissa and Karen take care of preschool and elementary. So.
Okay, and we're doing the highlights from this current year. So Karen and I are going to tag team because we work so closely together on our school improvement plans. And before we talk about the highlights, we just wanted to, I guess Jamie brought this up, that things had to be different. We couldn't dive right in. And so over the summer and throughout this year, our primary focus was the implementation of our Covert reentry plan. This involved creating a safe space for students and staff for learning, and also working with all of our staff to create or design a hybrid teaching model. And so before we highlight anything, we really felt like we had to thank our teachers for the incredible work that they did. And I feel like every time they got comfortable with something, we changed it on them. And they continued to come back day after day and do the best they could for our kids. So we also wanted to acknowledge our students and say how proud we are of them, their flexibility, their resilience. They've been incredible and have inspired us, and our families. This was definitely not easy on our families, and we appreciate their support, the support of this team and school committee and Kristen. So we feel really proud of the fact that by all of us working together, we've been able to stay true to the mission of Lynnfield Public Schools, even under really hard circumstances. So thank you to all of those people.
And thank you to the PTO, because that partnership has been tremendous, and it would have been a harder year without them. So some of the things that we did when we first came back to in-person learning, the hybrid learning, it sounds really simple and elementary, but the PTO delivered 400 pumpkins. And it was this feeling of normalcy and fun and craft that had been missing. And so that kicked off the year. The PTO also sponsored decorating a scarecrow contest that was so creative and joyful to look at every day. We continued that with a March Madness, where we had spirit days, different silly things to do each week, as well as read-alouds. So we had a K-4 read-aloud that we did every week. And that really made a difference for the community and connectedness that children felt and that the teachers felt with each other. We'll continue that with an outdoor learning day in June and a read-a-thon. We also had a Thoughtful Thursdays, where we were trying to include some diversity in the curriculum. That was I'll talk about more of that later. And there were, again, read-alouds that were done K-4, and we're working on that from April through June.
Great. And at Huckleberry, as you know, we had cohorts at the beginning of the year, so it was small groups of kids in the classroom, and kids that were at home learning, and we really wanted to figure out how can we foster the community in this hybrid model and have everybody feel connected even though they weren't always seeing each other or connected in their classrooms. So like Summer Street, we did monthly Read-Alouds, and those were connected to a whole school activity. There would be a finished product at the end that when put all together, it made, we had a giving tree and it had every student made something for it. And we hope that that visual as the kids walk by would remind them that even though we're apart, we are still a school community. Some of the themes involved in that were celebrating our diversity, kindness, citizenship, and celebrating being unique as well. It was also really important for our schools to continue the traditions that we have when we could, and we couldn't do all of them. But we, like Karen said, we were able to have our spirit days, whole school Read-Alouds. Thank you to the PTO. We just had an amazing variety show. And it really, I feel like that made kids feel normal again and like it was a typical school year in a way they haven't felt. We're also really excited that we'll be having our fun run in a couple weeks, which we just found out a couple weeks ago we can do. So that's been really exciting. And actually moving to our next point is our 4th grade student advisory. And again, this is an important tradition at Huckleberry Hill School. It's something the 4th graders look to and can't wait to do. And so it was really important that we found a way to continue that tradition. It's really one of my favorite things that I get to do. I was a 1st grade teacher, so I did not spend a lot of time with 4th graders. But what happens is the 4th graders who want to be part of the committee are all welcome, and they decide as a group what it is that they want to do to improve the school. And I don't say anything. I actually let them do all the talking and make the plans. And what we found is that this really empowers the 4th graders. And for some students who maybe have some behavioral challenges, this really motivates them to do the right thing because they're being held up as role models in the school. This year, one group began recycling in the lunchroom. Another group created a kindness box for staff and students to catch random acts of kindness, and we'd read them on the loudspeaker. Another group made a buddy bench for recess for kids who don't feel comfortable in a big setting, playing a big sports game. That was somewhere that kids could go, and then other people would recognize them and go and play with them. So they create a PowerPoint, and then they present it in front of the other kids in the school. So it also builds leadership capacity at this age. So I'm really glad that we could continue to do that, and it's something I look forward to doing more next year as well.
And at Summer Street, we call it the school council. And what I loved about that was they still had a feeling of citizenship. They did a Toys for Tots drive. They did a food drive. They have a kindness project going where they're delivering kind items. I got a sign from one of the students. And then they wanted to do the read-a-thon at the end of the year on June 4th.
Any questions for us?
Can I just say, so I watched the YouTube videos of you and Ms. Bennett, all of them. I wanted to go back to elementary school. It was so phenomenal, honestly. And it's like, you just felt like, and it was, the books that were selected were so appropriate, and the way you both read them was just phenomenal and welcoming and thought-provoking. So I just thought it was wonderful.
Thank you. And for Ms. Brennett, this is her first year, so she hasn't been able to be in classroom, so this was our way for the students to meet her and to feel connected with her.
I would like to thank both of you for all that you've done for community events and both PTOs. They've really tried in this unusual time to do everything that they could creatively think of at both schools to really foster that sense of community, and I think they've done a really good job. I think families are feeling more connected, students are feeling connected, and I think they're feeling really proud of their schools. So thank you both for being willing to be a part of that, especially you, Melissa, and thank you, Kristen. So I just wanted to say that. It's been remarkable.
Yeah, I think we could have done it this year without PTO. They made
phenomenal.
such a difference for our kids and our staff this year. We're so grateful to them.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for clarifying we're still in this year. It's district level is so excited to go ahead and mention it.
I was like, I'll skip ahead if you want, but I think I didn't.
We were right with you, Kevin.
All right, well, middle school, you can.
We're still in this year.
Still here, we're still here.
This year, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, before, even getting into some of the highlights of our plan, what we sort of set out to do, and obviously some of those things shifted or looked a little bit differently, I kind of want to echo briefly what Karen and Melissa said about this year. And, it was such an amazing, the adjectives escape me this year from where we began to where we are now. And hats off to our teachers, our students, our families. Our PTO was supportive throughout the entire year. We had some sort of really nice moments that you wouldn't otherwise have. When we were, back in the hybrid, and you may have had only 6 or 8 students in front of you physically, and over the course of those months with the hybrid learning, some of those individual class sections, or half of the section that was in person, really formed a really strong community. And middle school is such a challenging time socially, and there was a lot of, I think, students just kind of like letting their guard down and just really being vulnerable and open to each other. And that was really nice to see. We tried to, as best we could, maintain some of the things that we've done in the past, some of our traditions. Our holiday gift drive was a holiday gift card drive. And while we didn't have the frenzy of 250 students wrapping presents in the cafeteria, we were still able to have a tremendous outpouring of support for the community. We wound up doing a food drive just prior to February vacation for a local food bank, and we spun that into a homeroom competition so we could get in our pig races that we usually have tied to our PTO fundraiser. And the kids were over the moon. Well, we had to do 2 pig races, one for the blue cohort, one for the yellow cohort. And it's a little silly thing, but it means a lot. And it's just, the kids were into it, the teachers were into it. And we had our wellness week in March. That looked a little different than in past years. So it's just an extraordinary year. And you think about all the things that we had gone through from, the hybrid. We had our cohort A for a while. We had middle school shut down for several days where we were full remote. Then another time we had, I think grade 5 was remote, but the rest of the school wasn't, or one team was. It was just that late fall, early winter was a constant struggle, but we got through it. And, as I'm meeting with myself and, Tom, as we're meeting with teachers at our end of the year evaluation meetings, it was a tremendously exhausting year for everybody, but across the board, the pride the teachers have, that here we are, we can see the light at the end of this year, and we're still standing, and look what, everything we've gone through to get here. And a lot of accomplishment, lots of pride on technology maybe they never thought they could do, or wait a second, I'm going to teach kids in front of me and the ones at home at the same time. It just, things that were mind-boggling back in September, here we are. So hats off to that. I just wanted to mention that kind of overarching, and it really kind of social emotional wellness for our students, but also for our staff as well. And I'll let Tom highlight some of the
so one of the highlights that we were able to do this year, which was new to us, so still kind of pushing forward those new things during the pandemic, was to execute the Signs of Suicide program for our 8th graders. So if you think back to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey and where we were last year, we were, I think it was 3 days before we were starting the Signs of Suicide program with our 8th graders when we closed in March. So this was the first year that we were able to do that, and that went really well. We put a lot of effort over the last few years in training all of our counselors, in training our new health teacher, Mr. Angelo, in the Signs of Suicide program, and he had to, it was a little different because some of that he was
teaching through students in health class via Zoom, and then trying to do some of these screenings remotely or in person and stuff. And then the last round we were able to just do a few weeks ago or a week ago, and so that was in person, so that was obviously much better. But so that was great. Throughout that process, that has really helped us. It's helped the students have a language to talk about some of these things and recognize when they need to speak up. As Brian and Bob kind of mentioned, one of the easiest ways, or probably the most frequent way we find out that a student is in crisis, is from a peer. And so having our students start to be able to recognize those signs as well has been really great. And so we had a great first year, and then we look forward to making that something that we do all the time with them. The second piece on there was working with alongside Healthy Lynnfield and the Drug-Free Communities Coordinator. This is one of those, we've got it on the list again for next year, because this is one of those, as Jamie was referring to, we kind of got a little bit, but we didn't get as much as we wanted. We definitely had a better partnership with the Healthy Lynnfield this year, and there was a lot of after-school work that we were able to do with them, but not the in-school, in-class work, just given the COVID restrictions. So we'll kind of come back to that, but we definitely had our Healthy Lynnfield middle school chapter was very active this year. They did a lot of in-school. They were really key in Wellness Week. So those were student leaders who really stepped up to the plate and designed the Wellness Week for our school. And those are also a group of students who led the Teacher Appreciation Week. So we had some really amazing things happening that were student-driven and student-created during Teacher Appreciation Week, as well as a survey. They did some like mental health / stress surveys for students back in January as well, that then we were able to feed back to their teachers so that the teachers had a sense of where all their students were. So some really great things from them, but definitely more to come as well. Next slide. Okay, well, Brian.
So I kind of jump on the bandwagon. You were right, Melissa, you did say it better than me. So. When it comes to just, giving the kudos to staff, to students, to families, to the community, and kind of how we've reacted to this situation has been really tremendous. And I think it's, I know, I don't want to speak for Brian, but I know for us as administrators, when you put all this time and energy into planning things and trying to work this all out, and you think you've got a good plan, to see it come to fruition and kind of work out is super satisfying. But I think even more so, in spite of us, when people really take that ball and kind of run with it, and some of the things that both students and staff started doing, and it just sort of escalated. It was almost contagious when they started working really hard at things and kind of not just surviving it, but really starting to flourish and making things happen. And that was some of the stuff I think at times that Brian and I were able to kind of step back and just say, wow, that was really cool to watch a teacher do this, or watch a group of students do this, and kind of really let that go. And I think that for us at the high school, it's a little more organic when we talk about our SEL stuff. It's not specific programming. It's that stuff that we try to integrate it. When you're looking for us in our that item number 2, and we talk about the planning that went into this and how we were going to look at making the hybrid model work, and again, from simple things like using a breakout room as opposed to a bunch of blank screens, and what you were trying to do, and nobody wanted to be that first one to speak up in the middle of a Zoom. So by going into breakout rooms and now in smaller groups, then kids are a little more apt to speak. The teacher can then get in and work with 2 or 3 kids rather than 8 or 15 kids or 20 kids in a whole group. So I think a lot of the planning that went into that, and the time we put, especially in the beginning of the year, to sort of say, hey, how do we want to structure this? How do we make sure we have access to our students and they have access to us? And again, I think that planning that went on to not only the access of it, but then also going into assessments. We've talked about more formative assessments, more open resource assessments, looking at more project-based things that we tried to do as assessments that allowed students to work together to again give them that connection that they might have been missing otherwise. And I think those are super important. specifically, Jane, you mentioned earlier, what are those kind of almost accidental things? You know, we have this lunch block that ended up being this super long block. And at first it was, oh my God, it's a 90-minute period, how are we going to get through this? But it was really cool to see through the year these sort of like relationship walks, that it was a great time that you could still get a lot of stuff done in the classroom, but to go outside for a mass break or as a class to walk around, and it was almost these like ducklings fall, as a teacher would walk along and they'd do a walk around the campus, and it'd be like the 8 little ducklings falling behind, all chattering away, and having those conversations and building those relationships where it wasn't just about math, science, social studies, whatever they were doing. They were building those relationships, and I think that was kind of one of those things that, something that we were like, oh man, this is going to be a tough period, a long period, and it turned out being a pretty positive kind of thing. And I think those were some of the things that I think when we talked about it earlier, that there's some SEL going on there that's just organic in what they do, and it's kind of, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. And I think it's by giving them those opportunities, kids rose to the occasions, teachers rose to the occasions, the community rose to the occasion. And I think those are really cool things to see happening that all came from the brainstorming that happened in the beginning of the year, all that planning that went on. And again, now, even now, I will say it, you know, Brian and I had these discussions. You look at the nice weather, kids going outside at lunch, and we would keep them in that front foyer, and now they're out back in the field, they're out around back, and it's become this sort of open college campus feel that, and we're worried about things, right? But they're doing the right things, and they're just happy to be out there, happy to be with each other. They're picking up the trash after themselves. Yeah. They're doing the things that we kind of ask them to do, and I think it's, you give them that responsibility, and to see students respond to that and kind of take that responsibility seriously and do the right thing. And I think that's the part, again, that I feel confident that, yeah, it's been a hard year, there's no doubt about it, and there's certainly been some setbacks. But I think I feel really good about where our students are at, and the fact that they're pretty integrated into what we're doing, and they're doing some really nice things. And again, I think when you look at, for us, that first bullet point as we talk about, that we highlighted, just that planning, everything that's gone into it. And again, I think everybody just really kind of rising to the occasion and getting that done.
The second bullet point is all about collaborating with a healthy Lynnfield and working with the new substance abuse counselor to deliver substance abuse education in the diversion programs at LHS. And there were kind of 3 components to that. I know you've met the youth council and all the work they've done this year. Just a couple of highlights at the high school. They've created a wellness board that's located near the auditorium, which promotes healthy living. And they also produced a video on being above the influence. You may have seen that as well. Stars a number of our students. It was produced really well. The second were the focus groups, and that was really interesting. I worked with Healthy Lynnfield in the Youth Council to create these focus groups, grades 9 through 12, to really get an idea of the perceptions, the attitudes, the beliefs of our student body, and how best a Healthy Lynnfield could support our students. And we did that in the first part of the school year. And it really gave Healthy Lynnfield an idea of how best to support us moving forward. One of the key actual results that came with it was that the students were missing, this is probably back in maybe December or January that we did this, but they were really missing that compass time. We weren't able to do our full compass this year. We really did focus on the freshmen for the most part, but the sophomores, juniors, and seniors didn't get that compass time to really build those connections through compass. And that's where kind of what Bob was talking about, that long block of time and that lunch period really kind of filled the void, if you will. But they still missed that compass time of building relationships with the teachers and their peers as well. And then lastly, we started earlier at the beginning of the year with improving our diversion program. We've done a lot of talk about vaping in the high school and how best to support our students. Instead of just suspending the student and sending them home, it's really working to educate them and provide them support so that they can kick that habit. So that's something we're going to be continuing further next year as well.
Any questions for the high school? Okay. think we're moving ahead to next year now. All right, so you've had an opportunity to look at our new district strategy, and now we're going to walk you through some of the highlights. And before we do that, you see a slight change here with our, you can go to the next slide. You see a slight change here with our strategic objectives. And Kristen, I think you pointed this out, and it's always been kind of in the back of my mind. It was a little confusing. Accountability now deserves its own bullet. And what we've done is, curriculum instruction and assessment as one, and that's all more localized. So any of the localized data, localized assessments, whereas accountability is going to be more of a state level standard in terms of what comes down from the state level. So I think it makes more sense moving forward. And it used to be assessment and accountability. So now moving assessment up, more to the localized flavor of it. And of course, assessment is so closely intertwined with curriculum and instruction. So does that make sense? Okay. Joe, you can advance. Thanks. All right, so building leadership capacity. Stephanie, you did address where we're going with the identified educators. It's just simply we just can't do it alone, and this is why we build leadership capacity in this district, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Not that different than what we're doing with our keys to content writing model. Very similar structure moving forward with tech teachers, those lead teachers that whoever educators already know, but we're going to make it really well known who they are as go-to people. 1F, and this does deserve conversation again. And the reason I'm coming back to this was a highlight from last year, but the reason why it's going to be so critical moving forward is if you really think about the work we're about to embark on from an equity standpoint. So you're now aware we've hired the equity process to really undergo a pretty thorough audit of our district. This work is going to start in July, and I expect this to run over the course of 3-4 months. Sometime in October, I would expect a report. This is going to be a pretty thorough process. It's going to involve interviews of a variety of stakeholders, whether that be our educators, our students, community members, you name it. There'll be some surveying involved as well, and soon we will receive a list of basically what they want to see from us. Okay, so that'll be our policies, that'll be our manuals, that'll be our documents. So I would expect a very thorough analysis of everything we do in this district, and this is where that audit process is going to drive our professional development. It's going to drive next steps for this district. And that's where we need to continue to rely on our partnership with a healthy Lynnfield to make sure we're putting quality programming in place and connecting the dots with the work we're doing in our schools and in the community, because there's a lot of work to be done here with a lot of potential, so much potential here. So we're just getting started, and I think we're fortunate that so much of the groundwork has been laid, especially through the pandemic, working with a healthy Lynnfield and all of our outside partners. But now we're about to take this to a different level. So, any questions on that, Jason?
Thank you. Thanks. So with the equity audit, and I know, Kevin, so you just mentioned a few things, and Kristen, I know you mentioned that a lot of kind of what they'll be looking for, asking for is going to be data driven. So you mentioned policies, manuals, documents. What other types of data will be kind of driving that?
Well, we're working. Curtis Blyden and I are working with the consultants now, looking at. We're starting to pull all of our demographic data from our Reediker system, and we're taking a closer look at. The beauty of it is we're setting up a variety of filters depending on students' background, what student achievement looks like, not just background. I mean, background could be any number of things. It could be race. It could be, you know, it could be, you know, where you're thinking about how perhaps you're a student with a disability. Perhaps you're an English learner. You know, whatever you bring to the table that makes you unique, right? So we're going to be able to make comparisons across all of those different filters and to take a closer look at how our students are performing. So there's that component of data. You know, they're going to tell us what they need, right? So that's to come, and I'm sure there's probably a number of things that we haven't thought about that they say are worth taking a look at. I've shared our vision, right? That could change. That could be tweaked, perhaps. You know, we're going to take a closer look at our vision. We're going to take a closer look at all of everything that drives the work in this district. With the bottom line being, we want the most safe, the most inclusive, the most supportive environment for everyone. So, Stacy, I don't have an answer for you on that. Other than it's going to be no. I mean, I have a couple of things to say to add to that, but I don't. It's going to really come out. We're going to learn a lot over the next few months.
Yep. No, thank you. You answered it.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just make a suggestion? I know there are a lot of questions on the committee. I know there are a lot of questions in the community about what the equity audit is and isn't. Can we just put some time on the next meeting, maybe to just go through it real quick? Here's what it is, here's what the goals are, here's what it is, here's what it isn't, so that we're all on the same playing field. We're at the same level. Because I also don't want to go down a rabbit hole tonight with ad hoc questions.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, Jamie, and I think that, you know, the talking the talk part has passed, and now we're walking the walk with this, so I think that finding out exactly what that walk, that journey looks like is very important to map out for everybody.
No, and you beat me to it. I was going to ask you, are they instructed to provide us guidelines or protocols, or will we have a certain level of discretion with the information they provide back to us? Those are the type of things that I'm interested in hearing, what their thought process is.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the best way to look at this is that they're going to look at, you know, if you want to look at documents, they're going to look at every document that we have. So public documents, handbooks, policy manuals. They're going to look at student handbooks, program of studies. They're going to look at public data that's available on the DESE website for our school profiles from MCAS. And as you know, if you go in there and you can filter that by demographics, you can filter that by a lot of different. They're going to ask for all of that public data. They're going to ask us for attendance data. A lot of that is public. That's in DESE public profiles. They're going to take all of that, right, and as well as talk to people, right, and then they're going to triangulate it. So they're going to look at all of it, right, and from their conversations with people, their surveys, looking at all the data. Then they're going to come back and they're going to say, they might have some recommendations, right? If they're recommendations, right? They're not hard and fast, right? But they're going to say that if your goal, right, is to create a school community that creates a sense of belonging and is welcoming to all students, then this is what we recommend. So, right, some of it may be stuff we can't do, or right, we might try something different, or right, we will, right? So there's going to be some discretion there. So it's really just, it's an examination. It's like it said, it's an audit. It's just an examination, and it gives you feedback, right? And what we do with that feedback is for all of us to think about. I think that's the best way to think about it.
Yeah, and the selling point with this particular team is they really have made an effort. We've been meeting weekly for months now to get to know Lynnfield. And this isn't just a blanket sweep of let's handle this district like we handle every other district. This is what they're doing behind the scenes already has been pretty impressive in getting into our community. And like I said, the conversations have been happening on a weekly basis for the last few months. And the dialogue, as Krista mentioned, will continue as they're gathering the data, and absolutely we're going to have a lot of opportunities for input there. Okay. So the educated growth is a clear connection here, right? That clear connection being our focus on building cultural competency, evidenced by an equitable and inclusive community for all learners. I've talked to this committee already and told you this work has been happening. I think I pointed out it recently at a meeting, because I don't want you to think this work has been happening. Our educators have been taking advantage of some coursework. They're going to continue to take advantage of this coursework, in particular, the Striving for Equity course. We've had 40 or 50 educators go through it. We're offering again during our Summer Institute. And then as new educators come into our district, they're going to be required to take this course. So it just becomes part of our culture, along with building on our relationships with our community partners. And our educators are doing so much on the outside on their own because of our community partners. It's not just what, the reality is it's limited what we can offer in-house because our time is limited. So, but they're taking full advantage of this one. And the opportunities are certainly going to be there over the next few years in this district. They're going to be well versed, in terms of cultural competency and what that looks like in the classroom, for sure. Actually, sorry, can you go back to me? Any other questions on the equity component? That's 2C. Okay then. So 2D, we were set up here for success. We started to implement the DESE. We had created a number of surveys through our joint evaluation committee work around gathering student feedback in our classrooms. We certainly value student feedback, and we put a premium on it. This is why this is going to become a big part of our educator evaluation process, and we want to pick up where we left off during the next school year. This allows every teacher, every classroom teacher has a standardized survey that they're going to be administering to their students. To their students. To their students, getting feedback about their practice, which they'll then bring to the table to inform the professional conversation when they have to sit down with the evaluator come their assessment meeting time. So this is an important component that, like I said, would have been fully implemented this year. We will return in earnest to. And also administrators will be getting feedback from their faculty as well, which is nice, a reflective part of their practice as well. So there's the two components to this. It's also getting feedback from our faculty. Yeah, I can move ahead. Thanks, Drew. All right, so curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Stacy, I touched upon this earlier when you raised the question about, or you raised the comment about what we're doing with assessment. So we're looking at, we've been researching over the course of this year. We're looking to implement a tool that we can use district-wide, a consistency tool district-wide, that's going to allow us the ability to benchmark, to progress monitor, you name it. This is going to allow that to happen at the different levels to give us a more complete picture of how our students are performing, tied to some real data-driven reports. And certainly you'll have an opportunity to see those reports as we eventually adopt this particular tool. So we are narrowing in. The nice piece about this is we're general ed and special education are working very closely together on this initiative because we see a real need. And Roberta, feel free if you want to. You might be able to do a better job than me here, but we certainly have some concerns with some students' ability to access the math curriculum. Your typical math curriculum over the course of their career. So what we want to be able to do is identify where those needs are, and then put the supports in place when we need to make sure that those students are making effective progress in our general education curriculum. I don't know if I described, but that's the special ed component that we're also providing some targeted math content professional development for our educators as well, in line with this particular tool. So on top of that, what this will allow us to do is implement a dyslexia tool at the elementary level. And really the focus will be math and ELA. And eventually the goal will be to get this going at the high school level as well, perhaps in the 9th grade. We have a number of special educators at the high school right now and some math teachers taking a look at this particular tool as well. We do a great job in this district. This is going to allow us to, it's just going to be a more robust tool to use at every level to really stay on top of student progress. And so we're getting closer there. Jamie?
Are you done?
Yep.
Yep. So just 2 questions about it, and it's less about what's on there and 2 questions about what's not on there. One thing, I was looking back at our 18-19 school improvement plans, because last year got blown up, obviously. One of the things that was on there was revamping the report cards at the elementary schools. I don't know where we are with the implementation of that, but if it's not implemented, then it's something we should think about putting back on. The other thing that was there where I felt like we made a lot of progress and then and had a lot of successes, more than I thought, more than I expected, were the CLEs. Is there an intent to bring those back? Is that still part of what we're doing, just not part of the strategy?
So, yeah, I'll start with the report card. So the report card is moving ahead, okay? It is in the district strategy for next school year. Where we're going to need to be creative, the elementary level, there's a lot happening next school year. So what we're going to need to do, and I'll tell you, our kindergarten team was in a very good place just before the pandemic. They've got a draft. We are looking for, at least at the kindergarten and preschool level, to pilot a report card. We're pretty confident we're going to be able to pilot this during our first, what did we say, probably around January, right? Yeah. Is what we talked about. So of this next upcoming year. With that being said, Jamie, we're going to have to get creative with creating additional time for these teams of educators to work together to complete the work. There's just, you look at the plans for next year at the elementary level, I don't know where else the time's going to come in. But that's where we'd like to start, preschool and kindergarten. So yes, that work is moving ahead. I don't know if you want to add anything there. But.
Yeah, no, I know we've already recognized the team, and there's a commitment from them, and they're excited to continue the work. They were really excited. They were disappointed when we had to shut that down this year, so I'm confident we'll get that going right away.
Yeah, it's an incentive for the teachers themselves. They want it to happen.
And CLEs are absolutely, they are back for this upcoming year. In fact, I just announced Summer Institute, and part of that is an opportunity to start with some of those products that they're developing. There's a little incentive there to start thinking about their CLEs. And we put some exemplars together in terms of the equity work that's going to be happening in the district. So absolutely, you know, I always say with the CLE, it's what you put into it. I mean, what a tremendous opportunity we are giving our teachers. The most precious, we're giving them time, and we're giving them resources. And And it is just, yeah, there's been some great work happening in this district there, so yeah, that's going to continue as well. All right, so with the growing one-to-one and again, the technology and the technology integration, I can't say enough about the job the technology department is doing. We certainly mentioned the need to develop some lead teachers to support this work. And Stephanie spoke to you about getting a better handle on the technology that we're using in terms of usage. So I think you heard from Stephanie on this one, unless you want to add anything.
I just want to add one thing.
Sure.
One of the things I'd like to reiterate to what everyone has already said is how amazing it was to watch the teachers and what they were able to do. And when we think about capitalizing on the expanded technology, I think one of the things we really want to try and capitalize on is that can-do attitude, which they've always had, but now I think that confidence in able to tackle technology, and where I think there was some fear among some people, some of the educators, I feel like a lot of that fear has dissipated and they know they can do it. So we're going to work hard to try and expand on that as well. It's now fertile ground, so I have great hope that we'll do some amazing things, the educators do some amazing things around technology, especially with our expanded one-to-one.
Yeah, and if you move on to the next slide here, this first point about accountability is we were working together. We were able to identify some of the tech tools that we feel we wanted to offer come Summer Institute. So, it's in a similar light. We were identifying a number of tech tools in the opening 10 days. So we're hopeful that a number of teachers will take advantage of the Summer Institute here, the CLEs next year. Part of what our teachers have learned and done well is, this asynchronous environment too. So with technology, there's going to be a number of asynchronous offerings as well, which teachers can take advantage of. So we're going to be creative, with how we go about this, but we certainly see the need, and it's going to take all hands on deck. This next piece, and I'll let the team jump in here, but we just, we feel one thing we have learned. You've seen the level of communication that's been required by the superintendent and by our leadership team through the pandemic. This isn't just about communication. This is just, we want to have our best public face moving forward, and really getting our message out there. And it's great we're talking about all this work tonight, but we got to promote it, and we need to really connect the dots with the community. And I know you've done a lot of work with the website, and you've probably seen some changes there. We're going to continue to revamp the website. What's happening with the equity audit, and taking a closer look at our public documents. But bottom line is, the more clear we can be with our public face, the better off we're going to be. And I oversee teaching and learning, and in my eyes, it's only going to lead to an optimal teaching and learning environment. So, I don't know if you guys if the team wants to add anything there. I think it's been one lesson learned as we've gone through this. It's not going to get any easier in terms of the demand and what we should be, right, from a communication standpoint.
Right.
True. Thank you. All right. So social emotional wellness as we start the next school year. Now, just Bob mentioned the students are having fun again, right? Well, it's they are. But it's about bringing back the collaboration that as we knew it. It's about bringing in visitors to our schools again, and guest speakers and enrichment, all those things that we haven't been able to do, right? But SEL is always where we start, and it's where we will start. But there's going to be a clear intersection happening with our SEL and equity work here. But the bottom line is in all those hands-on collaborative learning opportunities and just educate students having the ability again to just build those relationships. That's going to be out of the gate. We're going to really SEL first, and then that's always been our philosophy, and then the teaching and learning can really take place. So, I don't know if the team wants to add anything there. So 5B, creating and implementing a new safety and security team. Steve Ralston's done such a great job with this in the past. I think I'll let Steve, obviously this is our number one priority is safety, so I'll turn it over to you in terms of next steps there.
Thank you, Kevin. Certainly this year with all we were going through, we did not conduct any of the larger scale safety evacuations off-site and so forth. We did, all of us, have our mandated for fire drills. So those we did have. Sometimes they were in hybrid, but we have had, I think in each building this spring with our full capacity, we've each had a couple full building fire drills. As far as the safety team, getting that back together this summer, obviously there's some new faces in public safety in town, so we'll be working closely with Interim Chief Secator from the Police Department and Chief Davis from the Fire Department, and planning some larger scale drills, jointly with fire and police for next year, and also account for any revision of escape routes, for lack of a better term, especially in light of the construction projects at the 2 elementary schools. So that's some work that we're going to get back into, and look forward to that. One thing that's also part of that is revamping our MERPs, our medical emergency response plans, and making sure that those are where they need to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Kate, sorry.
I just have to give you a compliment. In 5A, as I read, revitalize the curiosity and joy in learning, I think it's all of our goals are one thing, but the intentionality, and I know we've used that word a lot, but how we choose to express our goals really speaks so much to who we are, and that's powerful. If a parent, if a guardian reads that, that's meaningful to them, that's actionable, and they're entrusting their children. So I really appreciate the care that you've put together in these slides. The language really matters, and this one in particular really struck my heart, and I just have to applaud you for that, and thank you for the thoughtfulness. So that's all.
Yeah, I certainly applaud the team for assisting with that. That one makes me feel good too. That's what we stand for.
It's a feel good.
As a parent, like, how do you not? How would you not want your kid in this district? I mean, that's our compass. I mean.
It had to be said. So thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to curriculum. You can move ahead, Drew, please. All right. Not yet? Okay. School improvement plans. Go ahead, Drew, you can advance. All right. So preschool, elementary in terms of moving forward.
So now this isn't
moving forward.
It's coming. Okay. All right.
Boy, this is confusing, isn't it? So much in one presentation.
Karen and I felt that it was important to keep number 3 moving forward as well, because although we were able to build school spirit and the teachers did an excellent job of building community within their classrooms, what we did lack this year was that whole school community time. So we really look forward to bringing back that school family feeling in a building, so that the kids know, not just the kids in their classroom, but in the other classrooms at their grade level and in the other grade levels as well, and also that they have opportunities to connect with other staff, not just the staff that are in front of them in their classrooms. We know how important building those relationships are to help students learn, and so we're excited to do that again. One way would be through, at Summer Street, your great gatherings will come back. We'll bring back our Huckleberry Hero assemblies. We haven't had all of our students in one place now since March of last year. So we're really excited to bring back that togetherness in Bill community. So we felt like that was something we really want to focus on next year.
In terms of the Social Emotional Learning Committee, we meet monthly to boost staff and student morale. That's been really critical this year. And to really talk about the curriculum and the social events that we're having and what we can do to be more inclusive and think about all of our students. An extension of that has been the Thoughtful Thursdays, the read-aloud stories that we did. It'll be 8 weeks. We did it from April and we'll do it through June. And those stories are based on children from different races, cultures, identities, have disabilities or illnesses of one kind or another. And the teachers have told me that the discussions about the books have let the students feel more vulnerable and open about sharing themselves, and they're feeling that they're much more connected as a community because of it. So the thought is that we will extend that next year throughout the year and collaborate with Huck because they'll have great ideas too. So I think the Diversity Committee really inspired more thoughtfulness about how we wanted to introduce curriculum into the school as a whole, and the PTO has certainly been on board. We couldn't do the cultural enrichment that we thought we would this year, but they're on board to do that next year.
Questions with Karen and Wilson? No, thank you. Middle school. One of the big items that we'll be getting back to next year will be restarting the student advisory program. It was something that we were not able to do this year. That was one of those things that fell under just between the way it was designed, mixed a lot of different students with a lot of different people, and also took away time out of the classroom. And so it was just too many risks and too many costs, I think, given the limited time that we were seeing students in the classroom setting. So that was something that we'll be getting back to for next year. We'll be running through Kevin, one of the summer institutes. We'll run at the middle school just for advisory with a team of teachers who are going to be working to reshape and reprogram that for next year. One of the interesting things that did happen this year, one of the interesting things that did happen this year too was in the absence, kind of like what Bob was talking about, in the void, how did that get filled? And we found that the small class sizes in the hybrid model sort of filled some of that time. And we have, at the middle school, we have our team time piece of the day where students are with one of their content teachers. And that's time of the day where some of our students go to tutorial, some of them get services, some of them are doing homework or working with the teacher, making up tests. And those small groups with that non-instructional time became like little advisories. And the relationships and the fun and the sort of camaraderie that was created in those moments really was interesting to see that kind of fill the void. In end of the year meetings with the teachers, one of our veteran teachers said to me, "I know my students better this year than any year before," which is amazing to me given that they were roughly in school 40% of what they would normally be, given 2 days in, 3 days out for most of the year. And it was an interesting way that developed. So those conversations, and I heard similar things from other teachers saying how those small groups and what they were able to get out of that and the relationships they made with students has really benefited them now in the classroom when they're like full speed ahead. And so the conversation has been, well, how do we keep that? How can we keep that piece of the structure that was forced on us that really we're not going to be able to return to that? So how do we keep it? And we think this is one of those ways. So that's one of the things. Steve, do you want to talk about the next one?
Certainly, yeah. So we have some existing clubs. A few listed here. Our student SAC is a student advisory council, student council. One club, the more recent club, student group with working with our health teacher, Healthy Lynnfield, and also the 8th grade civics piece, I mean, and Kevin's alluded to it in as far as the civics projects, really seeing an increase of student voice, and it's amazing to see, and I'm so excited that we're now in year 2 with our civics curriculum in grade 8, and being in those classes, but hearing some of the conversations with students outside of the civics class and what's important to them and what matters. And yes, we're 14 years old, but we still have a voice, and we're starting to hear that more and more, and being able to see the power in that voice, and using that for good to make change where change is needed, and so forth. So this is something that, like tapping into our existing groups, I'm sure more will develop naturally as we go forward, and especially as we start to sort of peel back some of our target areas as identified through the equity audit. So we're hoping to be able to use that as a springboard going forward. Tom, I'll bounce it back to you.
And the other thing that we had on the slide was, which we talked about a little bit ago, was using the Healthy Lynnfield and the drug-free coordinator into the classrooms, in the health classrooms, and doing similar to what they started at the high school, but is doing the middle school version of some of that early substance abuse education, and really creating that partnership between our wellness department and Healthy Lynnfield. So that's one of the things we really want to be able to do next year. Questions?
No, just a statement, Stephen. Just because I do have an 8th grader, that I wouldn't believe the hype around. I wouldn't believe the hype around the civics program until I saw it, and it's just been amazing to see how engaged these students are getting in the process.
They're having a lot of fun. It's a great course.
Yeah, they and then certainly in the last year and a half with the most recent presidential election, there was on a daily basis discussions with the teacher and with each other. It's a tremendous curriculum, and the students are really becoming far wiser, I think, at this age than they may have been before, and critical consumers of information, which is also a life skill.
Yeah, and just a shout out to Mike Ween and Jillian Rubin, who are our 2 8th grade teachers who are doing that program, and they really are taking all this on themselves. I mean, they are leading the charge and developing their lessons and working together. What you're seeing there is teacher-created, teacher-driven work, and it's awesome. So,
yeah, they work year round in terms of their professional development. Yeah. They're go-getters. So it's kudos to them. Thank you. So, high school.
All right. So the high school's school improvement plan is all about integrating the beginning stages of the new LHS vision of the graduate. And so if I could just back up a second and give you some history behind this. If you remember earlier this year, the high school started the reaccreditation process through NEASC with our collaborative visit. And part of that visit, you have to meet the 5 standards in order to get reaccredited. One of the standards is for your high school to have a vision of the graduate. Okay, basically, what is it that we want our high school graduates to, what skills we want them to have by the time they graduate and go into the real world. So earlier this school year, we developed a committee, made up of some teachers and Bob and I, and department head, to come up with the 5 skills that we want our graduates to graduate with. And those 5 skills are all Lynnfield graduates will be innovators, globally aware, advocates for social justice, lifelong learners, and communicators. Okay, so we're going to start this process this year, and the goal is it's going to be all about connecting everything from the social emotional learning to the academics and the skills necessary for life after high school. Part of that process is figuring out how to assess the students towards those 5 skill areas. And that's going to be done through a senior year portfolio defense. So we're going to be piloting that this coming school year with about 10 students, seniors, and they will basically create a presentation, a portfolio of defense. They'll start in the fall, and then come next spring, they'll present that to the faculty, so the faculty will be able to see kind of what this process is going to look like as well. Beginning of the school year, we're going to be presenting this to the faculty so they can see what the whole vision of the graduate is about, and then we're going to kind of carry it through for the rest of the school year. With the hope is that in 2 years, and you'll see this goal on here again, you'll see that this will be brought forth for the entire student body. It's something they'll start their freshman year collecting evidence through those 5 skilled areas, and then come senior year, they'll present their culminating project to staff members.
So will that, so that vision of a graduate, you do a pilot program, and that will lead to the criteria for success, like moving forward, so this is what you need to do in order to get that, to achieve that vision of a graduate?
Exactly.
I don't want to use the term rubrics, but basically.
Yeah, well, part of the summer work is going to be developing those rubrics
Okay.
for the competencies that they need to meet.
Cool, thank you.
Any questions?
Love it. Good stuff.
Next, Bob, Brad. Drew? All right, so curriculum, essentially the curriculum writing that didn't happen, we'll be repeating that as a result of the pandemic. But the timing is perfect at the elementary level with, so the focus is going to be social studies in terms of the curriculum development work, and talk about perfect timing with our equity work. So, there's a real opportunity there for our teachers to connect the dots. We don't want to do anything in isolation, and we're not. And so SEL, equity, it's all going to be part of that work at the elementary level. And then on pause was the curriculum, the keys to content writing work that we really developed some lead coaches at the middle and the high school levels. They've been professionally developed. We had some initial training prior to the pandemic at both the middle school and the high school, and now we've got a full schedule laid out for next school year in terms of more trainings, more deliberate trainings. For example, at the high school, I've heard from some of the department chairs on some specifics around what they'd like to see within their department around the writing process. Just pre-pandemic, we focused on like MCAS writing prompts in the ELA department as one example. But our coaches, I can't say enough about the coaches at the high school and the middle school level that are going to be leading this work. And then, of course, the other key component of this curriculum work you've heard tonight is the Civics Project, which we've made some nice progress, but we're not where we want to be in terms of full implementation in the sense of a real community action project. So we will get there. We certainly will have the supports in place to get there for our students to make those meaningful connections and actually work collaboratively again in a real world, authentic fashion. So it's coming. So we're excited about that. The next piece here is the equity support, which I think I've spoken to you about tonight. And what I haven't probably done for you tonight is mention how the goal here, right, would be to connect the dots. So with the equity lens, to ensure not only equal access, but also a variety of perspectives are being offered throughout our curriculum, right? So the bottom line being every student being able to feel fully engaged in the curriculum. And that's by giving students choices. That's by tapping into their strengths, by appreciation of where they come from, by being able to see that. So that's that's all going to come together. And then the last piece that I mentioned was the assessment tool, as there's some overlap there with some of the other slides as well. So those are just a few of the curriculum highlights. There's so much work happening in the curriculum realm, but those are just, you know, we have to pick out a few highlights. So, I think, Drew, is that it? Okay. So we're happy to take any final questions, comments.
So I dare repeat myself, but I think we cannot say enough our gratitude and thankfulness for each and every one of you and each and every teacher and staff person in each of your buildings. This year has been one that none of us could have ever imagined or anticipated. It was hard. Last summer was hard. Again, as we all know, as we made plans, they changed hourly some days. And it was frustrating on some days. And then once we got into the fall, you know, we hit a stride, but then, you know, Thanksgiving break happened, and it got hard. It got hard again during the winter. And, you know, we all thought through the end of the, you know, the words 2020, you know, somehow this magically may go away, but, you know, here we are. In January of 21 hit, and you know, January and February were some hard months. There were some hard months to get through for teachers and students and families. We did it, and you did it. Your teachers did it, and the students and families did it. And then, luckily for all of us, for our sanity, March hit, things loosened, and we got into April, and now look at us in May, and gosh, June's coming, and you know the world's going to change again on Saturday. You know, all the rules go away as of Saturday.
And it's getting harder, not easier. I got news for you. Start planning the graduation.
No, but again, you know, we've all said it, and we've all complimented you, and I know I speak for each one of us that the word thank you is just far from enough for everything that you have done. You and the teachers, again, and the staff have been first in line for their students, for their families, and I thank you. And tonight was just further proof of the recognition of the good and bad of this past year, and we know exactly where we are to take that next step to hit the ground running for a full and complete, and I hate to use the word normal, 21-22 school year. So again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Thank each one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Jamie.
Just, and this is more for the committee than it is for the audience. Thank you guys very much. By the way, I agree with everything you said. But just so because we have a tendency to look at what's on the screen and what's been presented here, I just remind the committee that the full plans, which are really, really robust, these are just highlights, are the links on page 24, and that's what we will be voting to approve next week. So let's just make sure. I mean, there's probably going to be questions that come up as we go through this context, but
No, so if I could, I mean, most of us have spoken since this packet was shared. Thank you. On Friday, I'm thinking this packet needs to be shared a little earlier. Ahead. I mean, I know. Just speaking with, like, this was my Sunday.
Hours.
This was ours yesterday afternoon. This was ours this afternoon. Reviewing each one of those school improvement plans with joy and intensity to prepare for tonight. And I feel sometimes like we study harder for these school committee meetings than I did back in college. Stacy.
So, and I Rich and I spoke, and Kristen, I sent Kristen a note earlier, just saying how, after spending hours, I spent hours reviewing this, but the enormous amount of time that all of you put into this, and how comprehensive and thoughtful, the plans are, and then the detail behind it, because I did review it, and I want to go back and review it again, because there's so much good content there and thoughtfulness. So again, just a thank you doesn't seem adequate, but just realize that that this hard work is not go unnoticed by any means.
And I think it's also important to note that, this particular year, that this team was doing all this work, right, reflecting on this past year, preparing and thinking about a fresh start in September, all while having to manage MCAS, which had been pushed off for months in all of their buildings, and managing some kids who had to do it remote, some who had to do it in person. It was a tremendous amount, and then you have end-of-year activities that are coming up that they're all planning. So it's a tremendous amount of work to do all at the same amount of, this time of the year, and that's not typical. It's usually always busy at this time, but it was incredibly busy this year with all that's going on. So I think it's really important to recognize that, and I appreciate, all of the things, but this is really an incredibly hardworking team that didn't lose sight of what the end game is and what they kept their eye on the prize the whole time.
So thank you all for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You still going? Here we go. You guys have still more to do?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll leave this on then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Drew, I'll just talk to you back and know how to shut it off.
Yes, that will be important to know how to shut it off.
It's gonna be important.
Yes.
So the next item we have on our agenda is we are always ever present of the changing guidelines and rules from the state and the Department of Education. So the next item on our agenda, we have an update that we would like to do regarding we'd like to amend the face covering and mask policy that we put in place again. And Stacy and I happen to be the policy committee, so we spent some time with that this meeting, and I would like to turn it over to Stacy at this point.
So, based on, the recommendation of the CRED from Jesse last week, what we're proposing to do is to amend policy CFA, face coverings, to remove, there are two bullets, during physical education classes and while outside. So, make the motion, I'd like to move to amend the policy, removing bullet during physical education classes and while outside.
Second. So we'll make this a roll call vote, right, with our masks on here. Mr. Hammond? Yes. Mrs. DeBrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilstead?
Yes.
And Mrs. Yes. And I'm a yes. And I guess if I could, I would read I can read, oh, you want to read that? Yes.
Sure, yes. So just, to say that we're in accordance with DESI guidance that came out last week. On May 17th, 2021, after consultation with the Massachusetts COVID Command Center's Medical Advisory Board, the governor announced that given the low rate of outdoor transmission of COVID-19, students no longer have to wear masks when outdoors, even if distance cannot be maintained. Effective May 18th, this guidance update applies to recess, physical education, youth sports, and outdoor learning environments. Adults must continue to wear masks outdoors if distancing cannot be maintained. At this time, adults and students must continue to wear masks indoors.
So I would say that was the guiding principle which put the policy committee back in play to get us to the amendment today. The other thing.
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So, is that talking about indoor gym classes as well? So no, is that in students? I'm just asking because it seemed to be.
It's all outdoor activity.
All outdoor, so indoor gym classes.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the building.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, right now.
Yes, you still have to wear a mask in the building.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. I was a little confused by that.
Yeah.
During physical education classes.
Right.
Because they're more often than not.
And then we're all aware that normally we would share a policy update with you and then vote on it at the next meeting. But to remain timely, we thought waive that next reading and actually vote on it this year. Yeah. Thank you.
Rich, I would also just say to that, and we have authorized Kristen to be able to make changes to some of these policies in accordance with DESE. And I say that only because I know there are discussions at DESE right now about changing the mask policy even further. So if that happens before,
the school year.
if it happens before next meeting, it does not require a school committee vote.
Yeah, right. Yep. Great.
Great. Our next item on the agenda is the school committee's vote on the 21-22 school year budget. Mrs. Dahlstedt.
I'd like to move to approve the 2021-2022 Lynnfield Public Schools budget, the operating budget of $27,551,605.
Second?
So again, we'll go to a roll call vote. Mr. Heyman? Yes. Mrs. DePrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dahlstedt?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And then there are two pieces to our budget. So we have the operating portion as well as the capital portion.
So, and now I'd like to move to approve the 2021-2022 capital budget, which this year is 0.
Second?
So again, we'll go to a roll call vote. Mr. Heyman?
Aye.
Mrs. DePrizio?
Yes.
Mrs. Dahlstedt?
Yes.
Mr. McLean? And,
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Do we actually need to vote on the mask policy? Because we didn't vote on it.
We did. I thought we did. We did. Yeah, we did.
It's a lot to
You want to do it again?
No.
Go around the
Check that we did, that's all.
Yes, we did. Thank you. Now if we can turn over to Superintendent Vogel to share some good news.
Yes, happy to. So we learned last Thursday, that we had been accepted into the Needs World-Class Service Dog Program to get an assistance/therapy dog for the district. And Nicole Hyde Bradford, who is one of our special education administrators, who is based out of Summer Street School and also Huckleberry Hill School, will be the dog's handler. And so this dog will come and go to work each day with Nicole. She will bring him each day. He or she will spend time in classrooms, in the building, outside, in lunchrooms. The dog will also most likely have a calendar and will have appointments at the high school and the middle school as well, and different spaces or for different events to work with students. It can take up to a year to get a dog. Our understanding is that usually is for a more higher trained dog, such as a seeing eye dog, for example. So we may be able to be getting a dog sooner than in the next year, which would be really exciting. There are a number of dogs around us who have gotten assistance dogs in the last few years. So Burlington has, I believe they have 2 now in the district. Hamilton Wenham has one in the district. Gloucester has one in the district. And I think that Melrose might have at least 1 or 2 dogs. Fall River also has one that they received through the NEEDS program just recently. The cost of an assistance dog is $45,000 for NEEDS to train a dog. However, we do not pay, obviously, the $45,000. They are a nonprofit organization. However, they ask for us as a district to make an $8,000 donation to their program. And this donation allows NEEDS to continue their work and support their mission. So we will need to do some fundraising for these funds. So Nicole is creating a website for our fundraising, which we will share via social media and also have linked on our school website. And if anyone is interested in donating, they can certainly reach out to me, and I will put them in contact with Nicole and to get all the details. So we are really excited and hopeful, have our fingers crossed that perhaps maybe we have a new member of our school community in the fall who has 4 legs. So that's what we're looking forward to. questions on that?
So I would say this, we talk so much about social emotional learning, and it's not a class, it's just the way we operate, right?
It is.
And when I got the call from you to inform us that this was happening, it came out of left field. And we think of so many things that we can do when it comes to social emotional learning. Again, this wasn't even in the radar that it could be an opportunity, and the fact that it could come to fruition is just incredible. So I thank you, and I thank Nicole Bradford.
It was something I started. I started the application process in January, and then I was actually able to get one of the last spots with needs back in February. So then they closed down their application process, and then we were able to work with them to work with Nicole to take it to the next steps. And so it was finalized last week when she went out to do a site visit. She spent an entire day with 2 dogs. So it really is, I had the experience as a high school principal of bringing therapy dogs into my school on a regular basis, and it really is remarkable what a dog can do in a school with students who connect in so many different ways, that may struggle in different ways to connect, that students would talk to the dog, feel safe to be around the dog. I would have teachers begging me to have the dog come into their classroom if they couldn't come and see the dog. So it really is incredible, the level of stress that comes down out of a building and out of students when there's a dog around. So certainly one that's very well trained.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Next on the agenda, we have your update.
Yes.
Update.
Yes. Couple quick updates. So this past week we had 6 students take the Sealed by Literacy, and you may remember that Meg Valentine gave you a presentation on Sealed by Literacy. So this is something new that will be on students' diplomas this year at graduation. This is Sealed by Literacy. So these 6 students took the stamp test this past week, and so far we know that we have 2 students who have qualified for the Sealed by Literacy. So they will be receiving a seal. We expect that number to increase, but it's just taking time for this stamp test to be graded and for the results to come back. So as of when I sent this, it was 2 students. So
so you've only received the results for
2 students, yeah. 2 out of 6 we've received. So it may be higher than 2, which is really, really exciting for our first year. And then I had the pleasure on May 14th of being a judge at the Sustainability Fair at the high school for the environmental class, which was really a lot of fun. And it was the projects were impressive, creative, and all of them were designed and implemented by the students. And the winners, there were two winners. There were 2 environmental classes, so there was a winner for each class. And the first was a birdhouse project, which was done by Evan and Trent Ballion, and twins, who created, actually on their own, they took 554 pieces of wood, which they pre-drilled, and then prepared birdhouse kits, which they then took to Huckleberry Hill School and had the 3rd graders construct the birdhouses and then paint them. And then the children got to take these birdhouses home. It was really, really wonderful. And talking to them about their experience at Huckleberry Hill and working with the kids, they were so excited, and they just loved the joy and how really the kids were able to figure out which pieces went together, and they really didn't have to do a whole lot to help them with putting the kits together, and then also being able to share with the children their knowledge of the certain types of birdhouses for certain types of birds and the different sizes of the openings, which was really interesting. And then the second winner was called Hockey Stick Furniture, which was done by Alex Buonapane, Joe LaFurla, and Brendan Hennahan. And these students found a novel use for the leftover carbon fiber of broken hockey sticks. So they can't be recycled. And at many hockey rinks across Massachusetts, there are broken hockey sticks that are carbon fiber that just get shoved in the trash. So they went around and they collected all of these broken pieces of carbon fiber. They knew that it was very strong, and really waterproof, weatherproof. So they constructed a chair, and they had it on display at Huckleberry Hill. So they had a number of about 150 people sat in it. So it had gotten, me being one of them, I had to try it out, right, and see if it wouldn't collapse, right, it would hold together, which it did. And this was really their idea, that this was an idea that they came up with on their own to recycle an item that cannot be recycled into something that can be really useful. So I want to congratulate those students with a really wonderful, it was hard to decide, there were so many great creative projects that these students have been working on over the last few weeks. We have the fun run at Huckleberry Hill coming up on June 8th, and that was really exciting, and Melissa had said that you know, the guides has been coming fast and furious about having this fun run, and it looks like they're going to be able to have it, and it will take place on June 8th, which will be really exciting. And then certainly our seniors are done on Thursday, and senior week starts next week. And with all this changing guidance, we will have a more traditional graduation, a more traditional prom, a traditional boat cruise, traditional, well, the War Day would be a little different, and we're going to try to do it outside so that we don't have to do it in the smaller groups, but we can do it outside. If it does rain, we can move it into the gym, but they will have their barbecue, and they will get their yearbooks, and so that's all very exciting with all that's been going on.
And then the parade of destinations on Saturday morning.
Yeah,
is just another one of those incredible traditions that grew out of COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just so exciting for them to share their next stage in their life. You know, we do everything we can from preschool, I almost said kindergarten, but from preschool right up through 12th grade to prepare them to leave and excel, whatever that path may be. And it was just so great to see all those vehicles adorned with memorabilia and everything from the schools or places that they may be going in the next step of their life. It was a great time. It was a great time Saturday morning. That's everything.
That's everything.
All right. It's not on the agenda tonight, but I will ask if there's any public participation this evening. Thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn this meeting. Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
It's nice sort of being back in person, although I don't miss these 2-hour meetings. I think it's a little easier. It's a little easier at home with a little glass of wine. but I have to say,
I always say, well, I make more sense when my audience is drinking. So.
Yes, you did a great job, actually, as chairperson. So yeah, but anyway.
Thank you.
But anyway, congratulations.
Thanks, Denise.
for
Thank you.
coming.
8:15.
That's not bad. That's a big agenda. That's not too bad.
You've got 2 years to teach it. It took her 3 years to realize that doing the review,
A little bit of a throwdown.
doing it all in one day was just exhausting.
I know, but it's better than it's a lot to ask them to have to come twice.
Doesn't do it
I agree.
again.
That's my thing.
Isn't it that each one can expand?
Thanks for coming, Dan. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, just disappear.
Well, he was also tired.
No, and Kevin was excellent tonight.
He actually was excellent. He was. Yeah. We talked a lot about all of us. Okay. Right? Let's stay concise. Right? They have all of the supporting documents. They will have looked at everything. So if it's a repeat, you don't need to re-say it over again. Right? They kept it moving. They did.
It's like when we did the visit, we saw Mr. Dean, he said I pulled out the 35% things we really need to learn.
Yes, exactly.
You know this is off.
I was just going to say, are you off through?
Oh, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
Thank
No problem. You guys are recording?